What's up, guys, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and answer them here on this show in video format. And I'm just going to jump into it today. We're going to start with a question from Fly on the Wall 412, who says, if the Browns don't end up getting J.J. Watt, who do you see as a potential starter opposite of Miles on the defensive line? This is interesting, right? Because right now, J.J. Watt's really the only name that's going to be intriguing out there for a lot of Browns fans that's available in free agency. My thing is right now is that we have no idea who's going to really be available. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Browns play this whole situation out, right? Because right now, J.J. Watt is the guy. But what if in 2 weeks, Von Miller becomes available? You know what I mean? There are going to be a ton of cap casualties this offseason is what I'm saying. And it's going to be almost a little unpredictable on who is going to end up being a cap casualty. So if that is the case, the Browns and Browns fans are going to be in this weird place where it's like, okay, now it's all in on J.J. Watt. Next week, it might be all in on Von Miller. The week after that, it might be all in on Jadeveon Clowney or whoever pops up or whoever gets cut. Jordan Cameron or Cameron, no, Jordan Cameron, yeah. So Cameron Jordan or whoever it is that might get cut, might become a cap casualty. So that's the interesting thing. So if the Browns don't get J.J. Watt, instead of like trying to go all in on like a Carl Lawson or something like that, I would just kind of sit back and kind of see who becomes available, because there are going to be more names available. There are going to be opportunities for trades. Whether you need to sign somebody or maneuver to get somebody, the Browns are in a unique position to where they can absorb some cap room, and they can also spend some assets to get some veteran players. So if they don't get J.J. Watt, you know, it'll stink a little bit, but they got other options available to them. It's just right now it's hard to see those options because they're not currently available, but more than likely they will become available. The next question comes from Eli Franklin, who says, hey, Q, if the Browns trade OBJ, who do you think we get back for OBJ? We're not trading OBJ. Not this offseason, not at least until the trade deadline in 2021. That's when you could even look, man. He's been here, and I guess this is why I get like visibly frustrated every time somebody brings this topic up. He's been here for 3 years. He's not like he's not being traded or shopped as much as people think that he's being shopped. But for every second, everybody wants to ask about trading Odell. How about what can the Browns do with Odell? How can the Browns and Baker Mayfield get the most out of each other when it comes to Odell and Baker? How can they get the connection going? We don't have nearly enough conversations about how those two can get on the right page. But we have all these conversations about trading Odell for a third-round pick or a second-round pick. No, that's ridiculous. Odell's worth more than that. You traded more than that to get him, and it's worth it to just see what you have in Odell than to play this game of trying to get cute and trading somebody when you're in a win-now window. The Browns should not be talking about trading anybody away this season. This is the season if you want to win anything. Why would you talk about trading really good players? I don't understand it. So when it comes to this Odell trade, I don't want to trade him. That's what my decision is with this. I don't want to do it. There's not really a compelling reason to do it. And I don't think anybody's going to offer a compelling enough package. You can hypothetically come up with, oh, well, what if this team offers their superstar safety for Odell Beckham? No, it's not happening, though. Like, that's not realistic. No team's doing that for Odell coming off an ACL surgery. The most realistic thing is that you might get a second and third round pick. But why in the world, again, why in the world would you trade Odell for second and third round picks to presumably fix your defense in a draft that is remarkably weak on defense? Why would you trade for assets in a draft that you also have 9 picks? And you are also working to get rid of some of those picks because you cannot draft 9 players and have 9 players make your team in 2021 because your roster is a little bit too loaded for that. That's why I just don't get everybody's obsession with these old. It doesn't make any sense for any party involved. If you're Odell Beckham, you're probably going to have more say and more control if you get traded next year, because that's the last year of your deal, than if you get traded this offseason while you're recovering from an ACL injury. So for Odell, it makes no sense to want to get traded. Also, he's not going to find a much better offensive situation than the Cleveland Browns are going to be this season, because the Browns project to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, at least one of the most productive offenses in the NFL, with a defense that isn't too great. So the offense is always going to have to consistently produce, which is going to mean more money and more production for everybody on the offensive side of the ball. If you're the Browns, makes absolutely no sense. There's not really a compelling reason to do so. It literally makes no sense for any party that has any authority in trading Odell or getting those gears moved in that direction. So when it comes to Odell, I don't, there's not a real compelling reason out there to trade him. If somebody comes out of fantasy land and offers you something ridiculous, sure, you would consider it. But what's the compelling reason? There's no realistic, compelling reason to trade Odell Beckham. So why even consider it until something concrete, real, not like a Twitter, I heard sources from the bar. Remember when everybody was talking about Miles Jack was going to get traded here on Twitter? No, not that. I'm talking about real concrete, like an actual compelling reason that's real to trade Odell. Okay, then we can have this conversation about trading Odell. But until that surfaces, until that's real, there's really no reason to do it. At least in my opinion, there's really no reason to do it. The next question comes from King Dead, who says, how's it going, Q? With all the talk about Stephon Gilmore and JJ Watt, do you think our chances are to get them both? And no, by the way, we're not trading Odell for Stephon Gilmore, because I already heard that comment surface in this comment. Like, somebody commented it already. We're not doing it. Why would you do that? Why would you trade for an older corner with the torn AC, who's coming off a torn ACL? And why would you trade your best receiver for that corner? It would not make any sense. That's not what the market's going to demand for Stephon Gilmore if he does end up getting traded. All right, so that part of it, I'm just addressing that comment that I know is going to come up. But Stephon Gilmore and JJ Watt, I don't think it's going to be very likely. I don't know what the Patriots are going to do with Stephon Gilmore. Maybe they restructure. Maybe they release him. Maybe they trade him. That might be interesting to see. Definitely something the Browns could do with their later round assets during the draft and see if there's any interest there. JJ Watt, the longer this goes, the more I'm shaky about if it's going to happen. We're just going to have to wait and see with JJ Watt. I think they have a reasonable chance to get JJ Watt. I don't know what the availability is for Stephon Gilmore at the moment. Next question comes from Andrew Ballman, who says, hey, Quincy, love your content. My question is, do you think we should keep Case Keenum around as QB2? He's been a great mentor to Baker, brought a lot to the table. Please let me know your thoughts. Go Browns. I have no idea what Case Keenum has brought to the Browns. You know what I mean? But he seems like he's fine in that role. So why not? Why shake the apple cart, right, when it doesn't need to be shook? So yeah, keep Case Keenum there. Sure, makes sense. I don't know how much the cap's not an issue though with money for the Browns. It's really not. So yeah, keep Case Keenum there. He's a capable enough backup. And your QB1's figured out, which is the more important thing. So, with Case Keenum being back there, sure, why not? Next question comes from C. Zachary Chad, who says, what are your top draft priorities by position? I don't have positional draft priorities this year. This draft stinks defensively. So to look at it through that lens would almost mean that you're not drafting until the third round, because that's the only place you're going to get value for a defensive player. It's going to be best player available. We're going to be looking at this draft at the end of it, being like, well, they didn't address any needs. And that's because this draft is not designed to fill any of the Browns' needs. They will be drafting dudes who will be replacing guys in like 2-3 years once some of their contracts expire. Think about like a Odell replacement once his contract expires, or a Jarvis replacement, or Austin Hooper replacement. Guys like that, or even, a Jack Conklin replacement. Maybe they draft like another tackle or something. They're going to be drafting guys whose aim will be to play and be able to fill in when some of these guys on the offensive side of football's contract expires. I think that's really going to be the modus operandi, I hope I used that right, for this front office, this draft, just because that's what the market demands. It's just not a need base, or at least the needs for the Browns don't really meet what the market has for this draft. So if you're the Cleveland Browns, you kind of just have to meet what the market is. And if that market is offense, if that market is offensive tackles and wide receivers, then you got to fill it there, stash until it becomes useful in a couple of years. That's what I think the draft's going to be. The next question comes from Prodigy, who says, hey, Q, do you think the Browns should trade up for somebody like Patrick Surtain Jr.? Yeah, it should be interesting to see what happens there. It depends. Like, if you only have to move up a few spots to get Patrick Surtain, yeah. It depends on what the compensation will be. But if you're giving up like your extra third or something, why not? You're not going to really use those third-round picks that much, or they're not going to be as important as previous years. But if it's like you're starting to dip into some serious capital for future years, that's where it starts to not be worth it. The next question comes from Red Panda Gaming. He says, hey, Q, do you think the Browns should trade Odell at the trade deadline if they don't see how he's producing? Okay. Now, this is a much different question than the one I just ranted on before, because of when you would be trading Odell. If you get to the trade deadline in 2021 and it ain't working still with Odell and Baker, then yeah, it's time to start considering trade partners and see what you can get for him. But again, it would have to make sense and be worthwhile for the Cleveland Browns to trade him. And if they're not producing, or if they're not working well together, I don't know how worthwhile it would be. So the best case scenario for the Cleveland Browns in 2021, it is that Baker and Odell can get it going for that season. The next question comes from Connor Merkel, who says, how much would you be willing to give up in a trade for Surtain or Barrymore? I'd be willing to move up about 5 or 6 spots and maybe give up an extra third or fourth. I'm not giving up a second. I'm not giving up an extra one. I'm not doing anything on those lines. I'm only giving late round or mid-round picks up for somebody like that. But that's it for this week's questions. Again, guys, thank you so much for asking them. And again, guys, have a great day. Have a good night.